All right, what's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back again with the Power Rangers. Yes, with Shattered Grid. And I woke up a little bit ago, so you're going to have to excuse me. My voice is a little deeper than it normally is. But having said that, so in the last video that we had, we basically picked up on the idea that the Power Rangers, at least those in the main Power Ranger universe, were kind of being led to the command center, of course, by Finster, who was using the, I guess, components body of Alpha 5 to trick the Power Rangers, right? And then on the other side of the equation, we had Billy and Tommy from the main Power Rangers universe, who were in the alternate reality of Lord Drakkon, and then fighting alongside the Coinless, who are basically that reality's survivors of what's left of the Power Rangers and essentially humanity's rebel force, right? Trying to overcome and basically remove the power of Lord Drakkon where they can, when they can. And so kind of picking up with the Power Rangers in the main timeline here for a second, of course, again, they're all wearing green because they're tapped into the Morphin Grid power of the Green Ranger, since it operates at a different form, more or less, than the other Power Rangers. And so, of course, as they're being led to this location, we as the audience know it's a great big huge ruse. As far as the Power Rangers are concerned, they trust Alpha 5 unquestionably, and that's going to be one of the interesting things that comes out of this, is despite everything that's happened, how they look at Alpha 5 and how they look at Zordon is going to be changed irrevocably in the aftermath of this. Not in the most extreme way, but in a way nonetheless. And of course, we'll talk about that once we cross that bridge. But once they're led to this location, of course, they're immediately met by all these Goldars who have been created by Finster, right? By Finster, who's basically being used for the purpose of, you know, taking these guys out. Now, from there, you switch over to the alternate reality, right? And this is where things are really, really cool. And in fact, the alternate reality is really where the coolest things do happen at this point in time. Now, of course, the Coinless main base of operations has a giant force field around it, but the reality is this was always designed to be a hidden place, right? It was always designed to be a place where Lord Drakkon never really knew where it was. The defense mechanisms here are okay, right? They do what they can where they can, but at the end of the day, they weren't really designed to face off against this kind of onslaught. And that's basically what you're getting here, right? Like literally the power of Lord Drakkon and all these Ranger forces that are laying an onslaught on this thing and destroying it in the best way, or at least trying to destroy it as fast as they possibly can. And so what you get is this kind of jumping back and forth between the alternate universe and the main Power Rangers universe, right? This kind of bouncing back and forth is happening. That basically some of the shield generators are going offline, and that the only way to really get them back is to actually go out there and do it manually. But if any of the average people go out there, they're going to be totally destroyed. So it basically comes down to Tommy and Saba to basically get out there and do what they can where they can. With regards to the main Power Rangers universe, they're being completely overwhelmed by these Goldars. And the length that Finster and Rita have gone to make these Goldars extremely powerful is really cool. Because if you guys recall, under any normal circumstance, when they were fighting the putties or different things like that, they would cut off an arm, right? Or they were pretty easily beat up. The putties were quite literally just cannon fodder. But with these Goldars, they can reattach their limbs, right? It takes a lot of work to take these guys out. And the Power Rangers are being overwhelmed very fast. I mean, to the point that it's just good planning by Rita and Finster, probably for the first time in the entirety of their history. But the plan begins to go awry when the Power Rangers basically just start shooting holes in the wall in order to create an exit for themselves. And that's when Rita says, fine, then just like send out the others, right? And so what you end up finding out is that they didn't just create these Goldars that are basically the size of Power Rangers, they created Goldars that are the size of Zords, right? So they've literally covered all these different bases, and it's cool to see that they were able to pull it off. Now, jumping back to this alternate reality, the Mastodon crew, or Mastodon Guard, whatever you want to call them, basically, the Black Ranger forces of Lord Drakkon, one of the things that's cool about this is that Lord Drakkon was exceedingly intelligent in terms of how he assembled all these forces together, right? That it's not as though he destroyed all the Power Rangers, or pretty much all the Power Rangers in this reality, and then took all their power coins, and then just gave everybody the power of Rangers. Instead, what he did is he split them up into factions. And so you have like the Red Rangers, which were essentially the elite guard, right? Like the best fighters among Lord Drakkon's soldiers. You've got the Mastodon guys, who are basically just your kind of foot soldiers, more or less. The Pink Rangers are even cooler than that. But like all these different forces kind of exist together in these different ways. Of course, you guys will notice I left out one particular Power Ranger, and we'll talk about him in a second. But the Mastodon forces are really there just, again, just kind of shooting things up. But then, of course, you have the Red Rangers who start to join into the equation, and that's when things start to get a lot hairier. Because where Tommy and Saba are able to access the Falcon Zord and basically offer a kind of complement to essentially help these forces offset, you pick up with Trini. And what you end up finding out here is the one power coin, right, Ranger coin, I always use them interchangeably, but the one thing he doesn't have, right, the one Ranger he doesn't have is the Blue Ranger, right, access to the Triceratops. And the reason why is because if he had this, seemingly, it would complete his ability to conquer everything. Now, in reality, and what's interesting about this is it doesn't really seem like it made a whole lot of difference, right? That having the blue Power Ranger coin seems to more or less would basically like complete the set, right? But not having it didn't really stop Tommy from basically helping Rita Repulsa conquer what is basically the entirety of the world, and then allowing Lord Drakkon to rule over Angel Grove. None of that really seemed to stop it. The way it's initially presented here is it really just kind of seems like, well, I mean, we've got a Ranger at our disposal. The way this works though is cool, because what ends up happening is Trini says that reality's version of Billy basically died in order to keep the coin safe, and then gave it to her so she could keep it safe. What this is a backdoor. It allows them to access the Morphin Grid. And then at the end of the day, that's going to be the one thing that basically saves them. Now, back in the main Power Ranger universe, of course, they're still able to access their Zords. That's one of the things we talked about, that even if they're not necessarily tapped directly into the, Pink Ranger and Red Ranger and all, the normal Morphin Grid, just by virtue of being able to back end and use Tommy's powers, still allows them to use their Zords. The problem is that against the power of these Goldars, it doesn't really make any difference. And that's one of the funny things about the different Zords that were there, is it was always cool to see like the saber-toothed tiger or the pterodactyl or the Tyrannosaurus or something like that. But when you really looked at it for what it was, the Zords themselves were designed to be this thing where they were greater than the sum of their parts, right? The Megazord is where they all kind of unify and come together. And that's why you would always see the Megazord fighting against Goldar in like the first episode of Power Rangers, or you would see the Megazord fighting against some other foe out there, right? Because at the end of the day, the Zords in and of themselves, while they were cool, unless you were dealing with like the White Tiger or the Falcon Zord or even the Dragon Zord, they weren't necessarily designed to face off against a massive credible threat like Goldar on their own. And that's why fighting an army of Goldars leads to these guys getting totally crushed, all the way to the point that Trini is actually subdued and basically taken by Goldar and then, brought directly to Rita Repulsa herself. What you also end up doing is, again, jumping back to this alternate reality, and you've got Tommy, of course, who's piloting this Falcon Zord, which is kind of cool. He gets a few shots in, which is pretty awesome. And then suddenly you have the arrival of the Pink Rangers, who really seem to serve as kind of the sniper squad. But while all that's happening, Lord Drakkon stows aboard, or basically gets aboard the Falcon Zord, and then it comes down to a fight between himself and Tommy. And so that's the crazy thing here, is that the blue power coin, right? The Triceratops coin, the blue Ranger coin, the thing they need to be able to access into the Morphin Grid, the one thing that Lord Drakkon is missing, is really their only bargaining chip here. And so where the Falcon Zord is taken down by the forces of Lord Drakkon, and then Tommy is, temporarily kind of knocked out, you switch back over to Rita Repulsa, basically dealing with Trini. And the whole idea kind of seems to be like, regardless of what you guys thought was going to happen, you guys have lost. And that's what it shows here, right? Like, this is an instance where Rita has won. And it's kind of crazy to see that, right? To see that, like, with the help of Lord Drakkon, and even to a degree by herself, Rita overcame the Power Rangers, right? Something that we never ever thought would happen. But when you switch back to this alternate reality, the whole point of this is that Lord Drakkon basically grabs Tommy and says to all the other members of the Coinless who are watching, I'm going to give you one shot, right? I'm going to give you one chance, right? Turn over the relic, the power coin for the Triceratops to the Blue Ranger, hand it over. If you don't, I'm going to kill Tommy, and then I'm going to start killing everybody else. And that's one of the things that's kind of crazy about this version of Tommy Oliver in this alternate reality about Lord Drakkon, is he's ruthless, man. Like, he is extreme. A lot of you guys are probably asking, where's this reality's version of Rita Repulsa? You'll find out, but it's nuts, man. This guy is extreme. It's one of those kind of crazy things. And so while all that's going on, you have Trini and you have Billy who are watching this whole thing unfold. And the question is, what do we do? And she's like, you got to turn into the Blue Ranger and you got to go face him. At the end of the day, though, this is the biggest problem, is that Billy realizes right off the bat, that's not going to work, right? Like, the Blue Ranger is not powerful enough in and of himself to overcome a guy who is a combination of the Green and the White Ranger. The power level's just not there. So he does the only thing he can do when they go in for the kill, and he gets ready to kill Tommy from the main Power Rangers universe. Billy steps up with the blue Power Ranger coin and says, we surrender. We give up, right? There's nothing we can do here, and basically starts handing everything over. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.